It's me again with another word of wokeism. This one's a word I wouldn't usually associate with woke word salad because it's a legitimate word that can't even be used right now to mean what it actually means. We just don't hear it much used that way, and that is the word democracy. Now, if you try to bring up this word on social media, you will get people in two camps. You will get the people who roll their eyes and say that people like me are pedantic because we insist on reminding people like them that we, as in the United States of America, are not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic. They get all bent. We're a democracy. We are a democratic nation, just like the democratic nations of Europe, etc., etc. And then, of course, I have to ask what they mean by democratic nation. And of course, they throw back, well, people vote to elect the leaders and the representatives. To which I say, And they voted in Gaza for Hamas. And they voted in Iraq for Saddam Hussein back in the day. And once upon a time, they voted for Hitler. And there you have that. So voting simply means that you have this process for selecting your representatives or leaders. Unfortunately, in many cases, it would be leaders. We don't have leaders in the United States. We have representatives, yes, including our president. They are not over us. They are not the boss of us. They are our representatives. People forget that. But the fact that you go to a poll and you put a piece of paper or you tick a box or you do something to elect them or choose them. I mean, Brazil had elections. How'd that go? That's democracy in action. So that process, I guess you could say it makes the country democratic in theory, right? But that's not what makes a democracy. It just makes you democratic in that you use a system of voting to decide who the majority is. And then whatever the majority wants, they get. That's what a democracy is. We are not that. We are not that. And we are not that on purpose, because we are not supposed to be a country governed by mob rule. We're supposed to be a country where we use a system of voting to decide who the majority in given states and even in the country want to represent them in terms of protecting our rights, all of our rights. But the point of it is to protect all of our rights, not to send people to Washington, D.C. or to our various state houses to do what the majority wants. That's not the point of it. And when the people who say we're a democracy, our democracy, use that term, they are invariably, and you can find out because you drill down and ask them questions, they are invariably talking about majority rule. They are talking about getting their way. They are talking about dominating the people who disagree with them, not choosing the people to represent all of them. And we see this when they talk about things like mandates. And by the way, this could be Republicans and Democrats. It just tends to be Democrats. But when people talk about mandates, you have a mandate to lead. You have a mandate to govern. What they mean is the majority of people want you to go do what we want you to do, and the minority be damned. Well, that is a democracy. That's the way a democracy works. It just so happens that's not what we are. It's not what our Constitution, Bill of Rights set us up to be. It's not what the losing side really wants or should want. It's not even what the winning side should want, because it might not be you next time. And do you want to be ruled or represented? So this is how you end up in a situation where you have a candidate like Donald Trump who says, look, with Roe v. Wade, and I'm probably going to say it much more articulately than he did, tragically, what the Supreme Court did is send it back to the states where the majority of Americans, which is true, by the way, of all political persuasions, wanted it to be for the last at least 50 years. That's a fact. If you did poll after poll in states, People would have preferred that their state decide what their state's laws should be around abortion and not be told by the federal government they must allow. All right? And that includes blue states who didn't want any restrictions. And there are quite a number of those now, as we know, even though Kamala Harris lied about it. So everyone wanted the majority of their particular state to decide what their state laws should be. And all he did was observe that fact. All he did was, if he bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade, was say, yeah, I appointed people who did what a lot of people said either should happen or likely would happen, which is sent it back to the states where it ought to have been in the first place. It never should have been a federal issue. Now, we can have a separate debate about whether it should even be there, whether the government should be making a law restricting it at all, because leaving something up to voting that you think is a right, whether you think it's the right of the baby or the right of the woman, is immaterial. Having a majority vote away somebody's rights on either side of that equation is really not what our founders had in mind when they came up with our system of choosing our representatives. It never dawned on them that we would be having a conversation about how we would vote people's rights away. But increasingly, that's what's happening. So you have people wanting to get a majority. They want their democracy to decide what we may and may not say and limit free speech, whether it's on social media or in general. There are people who want to limit what kind of weapons you can own, what kind of firearms you can own. They want to use their democracy to vote that right away. There are other people still who want to vote away your right to, let's say, marry the person you love. Even though that's been decided in the Supreme Court, there are people saying, no, send that back to the states and go back to the way it was and have the states that want to be able to do that, and the states that don't, do that. But what they're really saying is, I want to submit your rights to majority vote. And whoever wins, that's who wins. And I hope you all watching this, like I said, I'm trying to be even-handed here. Because my position is, that's a sucky way to decide things. That means that ultimately somebody's rights are going to be infringed, and it's going to be because the majority said so. Well, that is democracy, but it's not what America is supposed to be. We're not supposed to have a tyranny of either the majority or the minority. And we're ending up with both. We're ending up with the tyranny of the majority by virtue of vote, where people are now saying, get rid of the electoral college. We want a simple, popular vote where literally 3 or 4 states can decide who's the president from now until eternity. Disenfranchising entire groups of people around the rest of the country where there are vastly different economic needs, environmental situations going on, populations. You can't even begin to imagine how different life is in the middle of the country than on either of the coasts, and then how one coast and the other compare. But to decide that the people who live in urban areas, the urban monoculture, should decide how everybody lives, it's our democracy, yes. And that's why the rest of us get all pedantic and say, fuck your democracy. I don't want it. That's not, you want to rule over me because you can get more people to agree with you. So I'm the sheep and and your wolf friends decide I should be lunch. That's not what America was supposed to be. We were supposed to be able to elect representatives to go and have debates about what laws could and could not be made in service to protecting our rights. So if somebody stepped up and said, I don't think anybody should be able to terminate a pregnancy, that our representatives would be sitting there saying, what are the rights involved here? Well, let's see. We might have competing rights. We have the right of the mother to her bodily autonomy and her property, which is her body. Okay. And then, there's an argument to be made that at a certain point, the fetus has a right to life. So how do we have this discussion and how do we protect the rights of Americans because that's our job. And instead, it's, we have more people that want to protect the right of the mother. Well, we have more people that want to protect the right of the fetus. Look, we have more people, we win. And then somebody wants to call that fair. And all I have to say is that's why at least getting it down to the states is better. It's better. It's not ideal, but it's better because it's a smaller population. You know, it gives other states opportunities to do something different. If people don't really like it, I guess they could move. But I mean, it's decentralizing it. You're not having one federal authority decide for everybody, which is what it was with Roe v. Wade. So it's preferable, I guess. You can look at your neighbors and complain, and that was Trump's point. You know, it's in the states. Yeah, your issues, but it's not a federal issue. It's not for me to decide anymore. What I think doesn't matter anymore. But that's not good enough for the democracy people, for our democracy people. Because what it comes right down to is, especially when they are woke, is they want to use democracy to dominate. They want to put in place a whole process where they can consistently get their way over other people because they had more votes. They had more votes at the ballot box, not because they had more votes in the Congress or in the State House, but because they had more votes at the ballot box. Like ancient Greece style. One person, one vote, and we had more than you. Screw you, do what we say. That's democracy, and that's what people seem to want. And here's the problem with that, as I hope those of you who didn't fail math in 5th grade can understand, that unless you're able to change a whole lot of minds, which is really unlikely, or unless a whole lot of people like just age out, die, move away, expatriate, whatever, once that majority wins and gets that authority to decide and govern over everybody else according to the majority's whim, it never goes back. There's no chance for the minority. Screw you, you're done. And we know this because we have California and New York and New Jersey and Massachusetts and other states which have been solidly one party for my entire life. pretty much my entire life. So that means if you're a person who lives in one of those states, whether it's a local election, national election, whatever, democracy, why bother show up to vote? It almost doesn't even matter because they've demonstrated they have more people. And then what happens when it's by simple majority rule and we now get to decide what's what for everybody is that they go in and they rearrange how the whole government works. We're going to change the rules to what benefit ourselves. We'll change how you get on the ballot in the first damn place in California. We'll change it so that the first 3 candidates you get to vote for are all from the same party because they're all chosen by majority vote. And then another thing that we'll do is we'll make sure that we run the schools. We'll make sure that we put our best friends and cronies in charge of educating your children. So your children will grow up to agree with us too. And we'll make sure to reward our friends and punish our enemies with various rules that do that, using economic means and taxation and penalties and fees and regulations and other things. And, democracy, isn't it great? So that's why people like me, shrug and laugh and say, our democracy? When you say that, what you're saying is, I want to save the status quo that has my opinion dominating your opinions. Let's save the country for my friends. Let's save all the benefits and blessings, etc., of liberty for people who agree with me. And the people who don't can just get bent. Because democracy, more people think like I do. And you know what? If you don't agree with me, you're evil, you're stupid, you shouldn't have a say, we should censor your speech. Everything that comes out of your mouth is misinformation. Very convenient, isn't it? There are lots of ways to disenfranchise people, even letting them still go to the ballot box and put something in there. Well, let's see. How could we do that, Deb? Well, I don't know. Maybe we import a bunch of people from other countries, hand them a cash card full of dollars that originated with some of the people you hate and want to marginalize, and then set things up such that these new people are automatically registered to vote, even though they have absolutely no right to be voting. Make new voting rules because, democracy, you're in charge of that state. The people agree with you, or the person who agrees with you is in charge of your electoral system in your state. And, what's the problem? That's how it is. Democracy, this is what the majority wants. What majority? It could be one more person. It could just be the person in charge, put there by that majority at the time. But you've now got 20,000 new people. Or 50,000 new people. Or in the case of Rhode Island, you've miscounted. Oopsie. We counted 55,000 people who don't actually live here. Ooh, no backsies, no takebacks. So now Rhode Island has extra representation in Congress that it doesn't really deserve to have because the U.S. Census just, accidentally counted more people than there were. Well, isn't that convenient? And these are the same people, the people who look the other way and go about doing these things using every legal loophole there is to disenfranchise people who disagree with them and up the ante that, people are going to vote who do agree with them, or at least be, have boxes checked on their behalf. Here's your paper ballot. We've taken the liberty of filling it out for you because we know you don't speak English. Just mail it in, okay? Or maybe they won't even see it. It'll just be mailed in on their behalf because they were counted in some office somewhere and they never even saw the ballot, don't even know that they're voting. And who's going to be the wiser? Nobody. Ha! Biggest story this week that no one's covering, is exactly this very scenario where the process of giving out money, our taxpayer money via the EPA, to supposed climate projects from the Inflation Reduction Act. How this reduces inflation, I do not know. But is going in direct grants to activist organizations that, amongst other things, register people to vote for Democrats. Yeah, but that's from the EPA. It's supposed to be inflation reduction money, paid for by the rest of us, including those of us who are in the minority, apparently, in certain states where they don't want us to have an opinion or a vote at all. But they'll call it democracy because people are voting, or names are voting, or pieces of paper are voting. So it's all good, right? Yeah, that's why I say when people go, oh, we have to save our democracy. Yeah, what you're actually saying is we need to save our power. We need to prevent anyone from coming into office at any level. I'm not just saying Trump. I don't even know if he'd do it. I don't even know if he's aware of how bad it is. But anybody coming into office at any level, taking a long, hard look at what's going on to stack the deck in favor of the Democrats who are so madly in love with democracy of that variety. They don't want that. So anybody who says, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean up the election rolls. I'm going to go in there and make sure this is fair and we're not letting illegal aliens vote. I'm going to make sure we're not allowing dead people to vote. I'm going to make sure that we are not automatically registering people to vote who don't want to vote. I'm going to make sure that we're not exploiting the elderly who don't know what day it is, never mind what year, and filling out the ballots for them in state-run nursing facilities, or any nursing facility for that matter. I'm going to make sure that's not happening is a threat to democracy. Anybody who says, I'm going to go to D.C. or the State House and represent the minority's point of view against this mainstream majority represented by MSNBC and CNN, who may or may not actually be the real majority, certainly not in all the middle states, the so-called flyover states, just the urban monoculture states. I'm going to go there and I'm going to represent my constituents and I'm going to make sure that their voices are heard, is now a threat to our democracy, according to these people. And that's all they're saying. These people are a threat to our majority power, our simple majority power, not our literal majority power. They cannot claim that they have 51% of all the people legally eligible to vote in the United States on their side in all of these issues. That is not possible. It's not mathematically possible, and given polling, it's not even literally possible. And yet, that's what they're talking about. We have to save our version of democracy, the kind that has us winning and then losing. So I hope that's clear why I and others would be so pedantic about the term representative democracy or even constitutional democracy. Because it matters. There's a difference. So I guess what I have to say in closing is you can take your democracy, yours, because it's not mine, and you can shove it up your ass.